Good morning, Jacob. How are you, sir?
Doing fine, getting ready.
So, just for those that don't know, it's Jacob Kornbluh from Forward. And I want to go right in, Jacob. What did you think of the debate last night? Who were the winners and who were the losers?
I think the winner will be determined on June 24, and here's why. I think that, in the end of the game, Cuomo as a front runner, but also as an underdog by the insurgent Zoran Mamdani, faced most attacks, but he was able to deflect that because the candidates also tried to get their moments. If it's Brad Lander saying that I'm not a flashy candidate, but I have experience, or if it's Scott Stringer trying to create that center lane that is not anti-Cuomo, but also not anti the others on the Working Families Party slot. So I think everybody looked for their moment and therefore tried to stay on message or reinforce their message. But I think in the end of the day, again, if unless polls show otherwise in the coming days, the trend shows that Mamdani is picking up every few days another few points in the polls, and support for Cuomo is stagnant. The question is, does Cuomo manage to get those who do not think about supporting him or ranking him first? Does he get people to rank them third or rank him fifth? And in that case, even if it's a close race right now in the polls, in the first round, in the final round, he'll be able to prevail.
Cool. Jacob, talk about Zoran Mamdani's interactions, Assembly Member Mamdani's interactions with the Orthodox community, based on your reporting, based on your what you're hearing and seeing. What have his interactions been? Is there even a possibility that he's in the arena somehow? Maybe a third choice, fourth choice.
So what he's trying is basically saying that, hey, you might hear some bad things about me. People are mischaracterizing me for positions I'm still unapologetic about. So it's sort of a delicate situation, because if you really care about Israel and you're opposed to BDS and you think that affiliations with the far left is bad, then you just don't consider him. But if you're suddenly seeing that, hey, here's the guy that number one is surging in the polls, he has a potential of winning. And then when I read an interview with him, or I saw him on TV, or I met him in the neighborhood, and he seemed like a nice guy, um, then some people would be open for persuasion. And I say that because, especially in the Orthodox community, most of the issues that people care about is social issues that they can definitely align themselves with some of the positions from the democratic socialists, especially, and I'm not talking about landlords, but I'm talking about families in need who want housing, rent freeze, free subway, and some of the other issues, plans that he has, even when it comes to public safety. In the end of the day, when he talks to an Orthodox audience, he says, you don't have to agree with me on Israel, and I'm not going to seek to convince you to agree with me on Israel. And you might even think I'm very bad on that issue, but consider that on all the other issues, I'm your ally. If it resonates, I can't say, because in the end of the day, in any other election, there's one definite front runner, and then there's all the other candidates who just fall away. This is the second time that ranked choice voting system is in place. The first time, people didn't necessarily consider voting more than two people, because Andrew Yang and Eric Adams were the two popular candidates in the community. They did most of the outreach. This time, many of the candidates, I would say even almost all of the 8 candidates, reached out in some way to the broader Jewish community, but especially to the Orthodox community, who vote in blocks based on rabbinic recommendation. And therefore, there is some way of like breaking into the thing, into the, breaking the ice and saying, you may rank Andrew Cuomo first, you may rank Adrian Adams second. You may even rank Zelda Meyer third. But when it comes to fifth, it's me, Brad Lando, or somebody else, and they're not necessarily viable. They're not necessarily viable candidates.
Jacob, so if you would say today, if the election were today, make a prediction, one, two, and three in terms of what your intel on who the top three are.
In the Orthodox
Yes,
community
correct,
or in
correct.
general?
Both.
Well, in the Orthodox community, I would say based on endorsements, where endorsement carry a weight, I would say it's Andrew Cuomo first, Adrian Adams second, and third would be Zelna Myrie, maybe down the list. Most people won't even go down the list.
Yeah, just leave it at
In
three. Leave it at three.
Yeah, um, if it's in the general, it's really hard to say because, as I said, there's a trend. The trend doesn't look good for Cuomo, but Cuomo can, you know, regain some momentum because if you look at politics and especially at close elections, Zoran Mamdani has a base. He has a base of supporters. His base is excited. His base is mobilized, and he has a very good ground operation. What Cuomo can benefit from is the fear that a democratic socialist who is unapologetically critical about Israel actually having a chance of winning and mobilizing Jewish voters who have an emotional attachment, who care about Israel, to actually turn out to vote. Now, in the 2021 election, turnout amongst all Jewish voters was 16%. Experts predict that this might surpass 20%, and 20% of the electorate in a low turnout election could be very, very crucial. And don't forget that Eric Adams won in the last round of ranked choice by 7,000 plus votes, and that was because he managed to mobilize the Orthodox community blocks, although they split between him and Andrew Yang. I don't see this time a real split. I just see Cuomo as sort of the first choice, but people who are not either not excited about him or have questions whether his regret about his handling of COVID is genuine, whether they would consider any other candidates, or because of the threat of Zoran Mamdani getting elected, that they would actually vote or turn out to vote for Cuomo. So I would say that it's a very close race between the first and second place. And I think that Brad Lander probably comes in third place. Adrian Adams had a chance last night, but I don't think she had her moment where she could break away from the other candidates.
Now let's talk about the mayor, Eric Adams, and his push for the general. He's running on an independent line, as is former Governor Cuomo, and the Working Families Party obviously has a decision and or a say. Now, what I'm reading and hearing is that obviously Mayor Adams would prefer, that Zoran come out of the primary. It's just my
Mm-hmm.
understanding based on what I'm reading and hearing, because he feels like he stands a better chance. Now there are rumors going around that he's behind the scenes pushing people in the Orthodox community towards Zoran, Adrian Adams, Speaker Adrian Adams, et cetera, et cetera. What are you hearing about that? And he has made a lot of announcements recently. And pushing back on anti-Semitism. Declarations and executive orders. What are your thoughts on it so far?
So what he's basically doing is a twofold
And is it
campaign.
working? And is it working? Is it resonating?
So what he is doing is a twofold campaign. One, he is actually running for re-election, but he doesn't have the primary, so he can focus on the general. So he doesn't have to talk only to a Democratic audience. He can talk to Republicans and to independents. And just to make it clear, there's a lot of Orthodox Jewish voters who have changed their affiliation to Republicans and haven't changed it back to Democrat to vote in the primary. And what he's basically doing is, while all these candidates are fighting between themselves who's going to better protect the Jewish community, I, as an incumbent, is already implementing most of their ideas and pledges. And so you don't need Adrian Adams to come into office to promote some of the legislation or initiatives that would combat anti-Semitism, because I'm doing that already. You don't need Andrew Cuomo as a big supporter for Israel and fighting against anti-Semitism, because I'm already doing that. That's number one. The second is that he is basically sitting from the side and saying, you know, just do whatever you want in the primary, just make sure you don't mess up my chances in the general election. And that's the instincts of a typical politician. There's no heart in politics. Politics ain't a beanbag. Now, to consider that he wants Zoran Mamdani to win, I don't know that. There are people who are really concerned about a democratic socialist mayor. There are people who are concerned about his inexperience. But he would prefer a splintered primary outcome where either Cuomo wins but just barely wins and is basically damaged politically halfways across the board among Democratic voters, and with no appeal to independent and Republicans. And if Andrew Cuomo is the nominee and Zoran Mamdani runs in the Working Families Party, you have potentially a Republican and another independent. It's a 5-person race. If he can get to 29 to 30%, then that makes him the winner. What he would prefer is that he doesn't have that 5 uh, person race, that Zoran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee, so he doesn't need necessarily the Working Families Party, but then Eric Adams could both appeal to those Democrats who should consider for the first time voting for an independent because Mamdani won the election, but also to the Republican base, to Republican donor base, and to the Republican voter base, and say, Curtis Lewa stands no chance. We have to stop Mamdani. I'm mayor ready. I got your trust. I delivered. I'm the only one who can stop him, and therefore vote for me. So obviously, he would prefer that to be the outcome. I don't necessarily think that he is working behind the scenes to actually make sure that that is the outcome.
Got it. That's good clarity. Jacob, what do you think about his reelection prospects, being Mayor Adams?
Again, it all depends. Look, in politics, you can never predict what will happen in a week from now or in 2 weeks from now. I can't predict what's going to happen in a few months from now. I couldn't predict last night what will happen 2 hours later into the debate when Israel started striking Iran's nuclear facilities. So we don't necessarily know what will be the definite issue that mobilizes voters in the general, how many candidates would be there, how effective Adams will be in getting his message out, in mobilizing, in getting a good ground game. And again, if Cuomo prevails, people will settle on him just because he had made that political comeback. He is the Democratic nominee. He is, the Jewish community is okay with his positions when it comes to Israel fighting anti-Semitism. He has his relationships, and as a front runner, he'll have an upper hand. So I think what remains to be seen is whether Eric Adams is just waiting to see the outcome and then reassessing how his reelection bid to be, or he has nothing to lose and therefore, will just go all in until November to try and hold on to the seat. And if not, at least he didn't lose in a brutal Democratic primary.
Jacob, what do you think of the New York Times piece that was written about the specific, what we just delineated in terms of Mayor Adams and his team?
New York Times is a well-read newspaper.
What
Uh,
did you think,
can,
right? As someone who's
candidates
on the ground, right?
Yeah, candidates in the past have relied on New York Times endorsements to give them a boost. Um, I personally don't think that if you take 12 people who share their opinion, that you can bank on that as being a recognition that you are the only choice. Any candidate could pick a focus group of 12 people and make sure that they think he's the best candidate. But it just gives you sort of another upper hand in the battle to be considered as an alternative to Cuomo, to be considered as a viable candidate. Look, the New York Times had recognized those people who were assembled by the New York Times, had recognized that I'm better experienced and have a better chance of standing effectively as mayor. And therefore, although you like Zoran, he is too young, inexperienced. Choose me as the alternative to Cuomo. I don't think that that will work just because Zoran comes in with a very strong uh, army of both supporters and volunteers, the strong ground game in early election process and on election day, but also with the message that resonates obviously with a lot of people.
Jacob, well, what did you think about the article about mentioning that they were steering, that the Adams admin was steering people towards or against Andrew Cuomo? As someone who's in the community on the ground, and obviously the mayor has said on multiple occasions, or it's perceived that he's not a fan of the New York Times, and they've never, done a fair job covering him. That's his opinion in his view, based on
Mhm.
what I've heard. What did you think about the accuracy of the reporting?
Again, I'm not going to question the reporting because, again, what I've heard is also that you don't need Cuomo to win in order to have a better future in this city because Mayor Adams is actually in the seat right now doing that. And so, whether they are specifically asking people to go against Cuomo or to consider anyone but Cuomo is very different
Got it.
because what they're saying is splinter your vote. Don't give Cuomo an upper hand. He's anyway going to lose because Zoran is surging in the polls and his support is stagnant. He's unpopular. And I also feel that you don't necessarily need to convince especially Orthodox voters who haven't heard that apology come out from Andrew Cuomo's mouth. They've seen it in lit, they've seen it in the endorsements, they've read about it in the paper, but Cuomo didn't come out and issue an apology to independent Orthodox voters. Here's what I did wrong. I will never do that again. And I feel like what Eric Adams is doing is saying, you anyways don't like Cuomo. Don't be worried about stopping Mamdani. Just splinter the vote because in the end, it's the general that matters. And
Got it.
I'm here to protect you.
Let's go down ballot now, Jacob. What do you think about Levine, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, and Council Member Justin Brannan? Who's done the outreach? Who do you think, in terms of one, both generally, and the Orthodox community, who's done a better job, and who do you think has the best chance of gaining that support and of winning? Period. Generally,
So I think that is a closer race.
handicap this for me.
Yeah, I think it's a closer race for various reasons. One, because most polls show that although Mark Levin is in the lead, 44% are still undecided. And we're talking about 44% 2 weeks before the election. That's a big number. That's an electorate that is still open to consider either candidate. Second, both have successfully done the outreach they need to the Jewish community and especially the Hasidic voting blocks. Although Cuomo got most of the endorsements, when it came to Brooklyn, because Justin Brennan is from Brooklyn, Mark Levin is from Manhattan, he represents more the richer Jews. And in Brooklyn, you have the Hasidic community that relies more on benefits. And that was Brennan was able to deliver on that as chair of the finance committee and as a council member. And therefore, both have successfully secured endorsements in the Orthodox community that would help mobilization.
But who has
Now,
the
the
edge?
sec
Does anybody have an edge?
So that's why I'm saying it's a close race, because Mark Levin is considered the front runner. But consider this: Justin Brennan, although he hasn't accepted it, Zoran Mamdani endorsed him and asked his donors to donate to his campaign. And if he goes at the coattails of Zoran, and Zoran gets a big chunk of the electorate in the first round, or prevails in the final round, there's a big chance that Justin Brennan will sweep that slate as well, just because people have decided that they are okay with that
Does
approach.
that hurt Justin though? That the Zoran thing, does that hurt him in the Orthodox community?
I don't think it hurts him, because he has,
Okay.
one, maintained strong relationships with the Orthodox community. He's a good communicator. And second, when it comes to Israel, he's been clear,
Hmm.
in particular in an interview with me for the Forward. He's been clear that he stands with Israel, that he opposes the movement to boycott Israel, that he will increase in investing in Israel bonds, and that's a pretty strong statement.
Got it. Got it. So he's been forceful in his support.
But
Question
but
now.
but on at the same time, Mark Levin has a strong presence in the Jewish community. He's heavily relied on his Jewish identity and his strong defense of Israel. He managed to get a lot of the support from large Hasidic voting blocks. And again, although 44% are undecided, he's still in the lead. So that's why I'm saying you can predict it could be a very close race.
Let's move down ballot further now. Council races. Any council races that you think people should be on the lookout in terms of incumbents potentially losing that you're following, Jacob? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about candidates that being, targeted because they may be deemed as potentially not in support, full support of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Are you following any of those races? And can you?
Well, the one race that I'm following is actually in my district. Incumbent Shahana Hanif
Oh, interesting.
is
Okay.
facing a fierce primary challenge. Although I have not seen any indications that she might lose, but that is a race to look out for, to see whether the money that was heavily put into her campaign, with a viable candidate running against her and her socialist affiliations, whether that hurts her, or the opposite, insurgents of Zohran Mamdani, where he is actually very popular in Park Slope, and Brad Lander has endorsed Hanif as well. She's his successor in the city council, whether that could help her as well.
Jacob, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this morning. Anything you want to add to the conversation that I forgot to ask you?
Yes, keep up your good work.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully, this won't be the last time, man. And all the best to you,
Absolutely.
Jacob. You keep up the great work.
Thank you.
You have your nose on. You definitely have your nose to the ground, and you know what's happening, and you break a lot of stories that help us all, right? That follow and enjoy this work, right?
Well,
So
that's
take
my
take care.
service to the country and to the city.
Thank you so much, Jacob. All the best. Have a great weekend and the rest of your day. Bye bye.